everyone. Welcome back to another CFSI CyberFence episode. This is webinar number 6. We had some great sessions so far. So far, my favorite was the last one, which was on cybercrime and dark web stuff. I just like stuff on the dark web, and that's one of my specialties with threat intelligence. Oh, there is Mr. Alex Sam. He's integrated himself into the background of. That's awesome. All right. That's why he was taking so long to show up. All right. So for those of you all who are not sure, we have quite a few webinars. We have up to 9 webinars this month. We're up to number 6. All of them are posted on the YouTube channel. Just head over to CFSI CyberFence on YouTube. You'll see all of them there. For all of the attendees, welcome to all of you all again. You will be receiving your certs. Your certs usually come between 1 hour to 24 hours after. I'm not responsible for these certs. It's all up to GoToWebinar, meaning that I can't help with any queries if you have any, because some people have been mentioning that they've entered wrong emails or wrong names, but unfortunately, I can't do much about that. So let's jump into it one time. So today we have quite an interesting topic, right? Well, it's interesting in the sense of a business perspective in particular, because a lot of people don't just consider beyond the typical penetration test and vulnerability assessment. All right, so that is part of a threat risk assessment, but I want to have my esteemed panelists and guests here give some of their insight as well, because they are all experts at threat risk assessment. All of them are actually managers in their own right. Jonathan and Ricardo are actually specialists also with PCI, in the payment compliance industry. 3 of us work for a particular bank, but we're not going to call any names of where we work and stuff apart from CFSI and Tier 10 Technologies, which is Alex's stuff. Jonathan has his own business, but I definitely will leave that for another time as we commence. So, right, like I said, we're at number 6 so far out of the 9 workshops. For each one, you do get your free certificate. CyberFence was started by me in 2021. When my dad passed away, he was a really great teacher, and I just wanted to kind of carry that on because he used to give a lot of free classes and stuff back in his day. So, I just thought it would be something nice to continue that memory with. So for CFSI, most of you all know about this stuff already. I'll just run through it quick. We do everything under the sun in cybersecurity, whether it's consultant services, pen testing, vulnerability assessments, threat risk assessments, dark web intel, advanced cybersecurity training, and we're the only ones in the Caribbean to do training for the EC Council, like the Certified Ethical Hacker, Certified Threat Intelligence Analyst, Certified Chief Information Security Officer. All of us are actually lecturers for CFSI as well, right? These guys aren't just my colleagues, but they're also my friends. They also work with me teaching. We've educated a few thousand people, well, not just in the Caribbean, but internationally. Right, we wrote the book on it in forensics, and I think Alex and Johnny are the biggest nerds inside of here. Actually, I think everyone is a big nerd inside of here except me. Um, I'm just the one that organizes the food and drinks. So if anyone wants to, if anyone wants to add us on LinkedIn, please feel free. So that's me, Shiva Parasram, right? If you have any questions, if you want to get any advice, find out about services. I've actually uploaded the handout, the course brochure, not the course brochure, the service brochure for CFSI in the handout section. So if you all want to take a look at it, thanks. If you want to share it also, that's appreciated. Brightest smile you'll see for the day, Mr. Alex Sam. Alex is the Caribbean's big shot across in Curacao and St. Martin. He's one of the best pen testers, probably in the world, I would say, if not the best. And he works for BDO, but he's also the owner of Tier 10 Technologies, where he does every single thing that I do for CFSI. So we all partner up with our services. So it's not like, you go to one and whatever. If you have need for all of us, we all work together. All right, wonderful picture there, Mr. Deodat Ganga. He's an extraordinaire cybersecurity enterprise risk manager, pen tester, threat intelligence analyst, vulnerability management, cybersecurity lecturer. I don't know when he gets any sleep. And the pretty one in the group here. That's Mr. Jonathan Marber. He's a senior consultant and PCI technical lead at a place that we won't mention either. But everyone pretty much does work for banks and stuff like that, regionally, internationally, as well as a lot of consultant for everyone. Johnny is one of the PCI experts right now in the region, I would say. Right, so he will give some insight on not just PCI, but other stuff as well. So if you want to reach out to us, ask questions, it's fine. Then we have Mr. Ricardo Frazier himself, Mr. Ricardo J. Frazier. Sorry, he's an expert in enterprise security and risk and governance, data analytics and AI, and lots of stuff that I won't say is trending, but we will be seeing a lot more of in the years to come. All right, so let's look at what we have today, guys. Just to remind you all, you're all muted, right? Just in case you're not aware, right? All right, so we'll keep it simple, right? Because we already had 7 minutes past, so it's a lot of stuff. We have about 15 content slides itself, and hopefully we could all give our points in under 20 to 30 seconds. Is looking at you, Dale. So Dale was just very enthusiastic about risk in particular, so I know he gets very carried away, and it's his actual passion in life. So sometimes we'll just have to remind him. So we want to look at TRAs and risk, how to identify risk, things like the actual threat risk matrix with likelihood and impact and stuff. Ricardo as well eats, sleeps, and breathes this stuff at Ricardo. It's Ace Consulting, right? Yeah, so Ricardo has his own company as well, which is Ace Consulting. He does a lot of risk and governance too. So, like I said, feel free to reach out to us. We want to look at why boards and executives really need to take this seriously, because so far we've had a lot of technical people on the webinars, but I know we have a lot more managers on today's calls, because this is more from a management perspective about why these are important. And we actually want to look at case study, albeit from 2017. It is one of the best so far and one of probably the most popular case studies about where a threat risk assessment and everything that's included in a threat risk assessment could have reduced the actual breach and impact on the organization, and maybe maintain some customer trust and so on. All right, so I'm going to jump into it one time. So the threat risk assessments, a good definition really is that a TRA, as we call it, is really a structured process to identify, analyze, and prioritize potential threats to an organization's assets. It isn't just one piece of information or one document or anything like that. It's actually a very um, well thought out, well structured set of processes in particular. All right, so the purpose of it, for example, like why we would do a TRA, it's really just to protect your critical assets, right? Your intellectual property, your customer data, your IT systems, if you have stuff in the cloud as well, solutions as a service, all of these things. It's to be able to protect them, and not only just to protect them, but sometimes with all of the breaches that we've had over the past, I would say, 5 years in particular, if you'll follow the threat intelligence that Alex and I do every month, you'll probably see that we have like 500 or 600 breaches, right? So from a compliance perspective as well, this is one of the reasons why we do it. So it's not just to identify risk and what are the risks to the organizations, but it is also for compliance and to make sure that things are done properly. If you are not compliant, you have some hefty fines. Maybe Jonathan could probably talk about that in a while, but um, it's a lot of things. Even a penetration test as well, vulnerability assessment. These would all be part of the entire threat risk assessment. It's not just a one type document thing. It's actually something that can take several months to even put together and then complete by itself. Ricardo, you just want to jump in here and just give your 2 cents on what else I might have missed about what else we have available for threat risk assessments, what should be considered?
Uh, Good day, everybody. I think you covered it, Shiva, but I'll add that, with threat risk assessment, it's about looking at the solution as opposed to the vendor. And it's about making sure that that solution is going to introduce into your organization, whether you're going to build the solution or whether you're going to buy the solution, doesn't, increase incremental risk to your organization. So you don't want to expose your organization to more risk than what is already there. So it's a chance to really secure the solution and implement controls to protect the solution and the business.
That's pretty good. Thanks. Dave, you want to just jump in here with anything else that we should look at for risk identification based on your experience?
Well, I mean, you guys covered it, but I think that risk, we need to put like emotions and feelings aside when we're doing these risk assessments. Risk is subjective, but we need to take an unbiased approach based on industry standards, um, whatever best practices there are out there.
Okay. Alex, Johnny?
Yeah, it could actually help in terms of PCI as well, in terms of actually scoping your PCI assessment. So let's just say, well, let's say you have to do a pen test for PCI. You have to actually do a pen test on your cardholder data environments. TRAs actually help you. I don't want to say, well, scoping is probably the wrong word, but it'll actually help you prioritize where you could start your pen test first. So let's just say you do a TRA on your password management across the entire organization. By doing a TRA, you could actually find out, well, hey, look, we think that we have a proper solution here in terms of software, but how is that solution configured? Is it actually utilizing, 12 characters, alphanumeric passwords, whatever it is, or is it just, a long text-based password? And from there, pen testers will actually use that TRA to start, probably just doing some brute force testing on your passwords as the first go around. Again, it's not scoping, but just to help focus your pen testing efforts.
And I left Alex for last in particular because I really want to hear your thoughts on this risk identification.
That exactly what Johnny talked about is like the scope is not the correct word, but the focus and it drives the focus into where your efforts should be prioritized. Because you don't want to assess everything because not everything is within your purview to test at this moment, because everything could be tested as needed. Right. So the whole point of it is to identify what should be tested at the point in time, whether it be your technology stuff, whether it be your the people stuff of things, whatever it is. The whole point of it is understanding that, identifying that, understanding the vulnerabilities that sit behind those things, and then what you will do to be able to fix those things. And that's where I jumped on the gun a little bit there. That's pretty much my thing on that.
No, but that's a real good point that you made there, Alex, because I mean, let's say that you have specific instances. I mean, it's good to be able to identify all threats at the same time if possible, but it's pretty much impossible. But identifying the actual threats and categorizing them, that's a critical aspect because you can't protect against what you don't know exists. So hopefully this is where the TRA comes in to help you understand, identify, categorize your threats as well. So for example, if you look at uh, there was Verizon had a data breach last year, I think, um, sometime recently, right? But I
I
think it
breach
was because
regularly.
of, yeah, it was I think it was a phishing breach or something like that. So even if you wanted to, just zone in on certain aspects where you know that you at least had some sort of issue there and then break it down, yes, that can work, but it shouldn't be something that's proactive in particular, because once you identify the risk, this is where you have to go ahead and assess the actual likelihood of the risk. So I'll leave this one open if anybody wants to take it and go ahead with the likelihood assessment and stuff.
I know they love to talk about the likelihood of these things occurring.
So another point I wanted to make, you guys spoke about like the pen test and what you need to do like threat risk assessments on your pen test as well. Because you don't just take the word for it, you look at what we have deployed, compensating controls and whatnot.
Yeah,
Great.
I want to jump in and make a next point, following up on something Shiva said. You cannot protect what you don't know, right? So it's very important to assess which type of approach you're going to use to identify risk. So, for example, a popular approach is a scenario-based one. So you go through some scenarios, having identified the risk, so you will know whether that risk is really meaningful to your organization, right? Because it's not just a textbook exercise that you could pull, say, from some AI. You need persons with experience to do this sort of assessment.
Yeah. So with the likelihood component, remember what we're trying to understand with the likelihood here is understand what is the chance of something occurring, and if it does occur, what impact is going to have on your operations, right? So something could have a low chance of occurring, but the impact is, take you 4 weeks to recover from it. That's going to be on the high side of things. Whereas the likelihood is very possible it's going to happen. For example, most organizations take the stance of they are going to be breached, so they accept that fact outright. What they look at defining now is if we are breached or when we are breached, how quickly can we recover from it? What do we have in place to recover from it and determine that from that standpoint? One thing also that's taken into consideration is how often it's going to happen because we have some companies here that they constantly get breached. You just don't hear about it. A good example is there's a police station, a police force somewhere in the US, one of those small towns. They got breached, and they paid the ransom, and about 2 weeks after, or about a month after they got recovered, they got breached again. Same group, and then they pay the ransom again. They got breached about 3 or 4 times within the span of a year before someone says like, no, 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 we need to understand what's the risks here, what's the likelihood of this breach occurring again, which clearly was very high, and what's the impact was clearly again it was very high because they couldn't book anything that's happening in the system. So yeah, that's the likelihood assessment that you're looking at there. The impact and the how frequently it's going to occur, when it will occur, and the impact and your recovery from that when it does occur.
And then if you look at the example below, right, where I have phishing is a high likelihood due to its frequency, and that's because when you think about a phishing attack compared to other attacks, the cost of running a phishing attack is relatively low. It is relatively easy to execute because once you have your templates or they have their templates and the payloads and stuff, it's really just to hit on send and send out to whether it's 100, 1,000, 10,000, whatever it might be. All right, so that's why you could run it so many times and have multiple campaigns running at the same time. It's not to say that a company will get like one phishing email a day, depending on the amount of employees you have, what the different types of phishing with spear phishing for executives. So for that reason in particular is why you will find that phishing it has a high likelihood due to not just its frequency, but other things as well, like the costs and the ease of executing and stuff there as well.
Not only that, Shiva, because you're attacking the weakest link in the organization, which are
True.
the humans, the people.
Another good point that they brought up there, because that's all based on social engineering, and you find that the majority of attacks that are successful, if you've been following the series, Alex and I always bring up the phishing attacks. Why? Because of what they just spoke about, right? The weakest link, which is human error. And the human error, especially where you involve a bit of fear and urgency inside it, yeah, that is one of the reasons why it's always so successful. So the impact is where we have potential damage from the actual threat, right? Sometimes you have costs to recover, you have some fines. Um, Guys, y'all know about the fines that we have in the Caribbean with GDPR and stuff there, and I can't remember if it's 25% or what.
It's not 15% of your yearly, but not yearly income, sorry, your revenue. I don't
It
know,
was
Johnny might know better than me, but I think it's 15 to
I
20% of
can't
it.
remember the percentage offhand, but it is a certain percentage of your yearly revenue. Yeah, not profits or anything. I think it's just revenue.
I think it's
Yeah,
a
it was our
range
revenue.
based on what happens as well and the type of data that was breached, especially if it's European
Yeah.
data. The fines are very high. They're much higher.
Yeah, I can
You
remember
think
if
to
it's
remember about,
go
yeah,
ahead,
correct.
Alex.
If it was what the range is, but you think to remember GDPR is GDPR. Even though it's a European thing, a lot of organizations within the Caribbean region don't even care too much for it, even if they do hold European what's the word looking for, citizens data in their systems. Like I remember doing policies at point in time and raising the point of we need to consider GDPR, you need to consider federal related stuff as well, because if you do hold information about citizens from Europe or even the US, certain things need to be in place for it. And you need to understand the impact of if I don't do this to protect it, what is going to happen to me? What do I have to pay? What is my fine? What is my restriction? well, I may be barred from performing transactions in a particular region of the world going forward. You never know. So they really need to understand this. Even here in the Dutch Caribbean, they really don't pay much attention to the GDPR requirements. They talk about
Yeah,
it, but that's where it
yeah,
is.
even some bigger
Yeah,
companies as well. I think I know what you're talking about, Alex. They may have branches in EU and they just YOLO it. Yeah, but
But why you all think that is though, that they don't really take it on that seriously, considering that they could be fined in the millions
but
if
the thing
something were
is,
to
they
go.
should, because even if you don't hold data of a person that falls under the purview of GDPR, so some European person or something like that, if you have cloud hosting providers, your data centers where you're storing Caribbean data in Europe, you still fall under GDPR's purview.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons why they don't do it is one, it is an extensive engagement to ensure that everything you do
Yeah.
is compliant with GDPR. It is not an easy endeavor. It is easier, in my opinion, to be ISO 27000 aligned than to be GDPR aligned,
Yeah,
because the
the
ISO
Yeah.
audit
27000,
requirements of
yeah, the
GDPR are
requirements
very.
are ridiculous. And there's a new one
just
coming out. Actually, it's not even new anymore. I think it's been out 2 years now, called DORA from the European Union, but that's
Mm.
focused solely on the financial institutions, solely on banks and insurance companies. That's it, and credit unions. But their restrictions are even more thing than the GDPR, they're more complex than the GDPR. So the
in some
difficulty is
cases,
that being able to
just in some
align to
cases,
it.
it's actually way more expensive, as you were saying, Alex, to become compliant. They just rather would,
Yeah.
take the
Yeah.
risk and pay the fines. So yeah,
Um, that being
The the,
said,
the
though, even though it's more difficult, it should not, you should not use
exactly.
it as an excuse not to be like safe, not to do something to protect yourself.
True, because we have so many frameworks and stuff available that you don't necessarily have to have your own customized frameworks. We have so much that you could just literally pull out of the box and just use what you need to. So at least you're aligned with some sort of framework. So for the smaller people or the smaller organizations out there, you have so many different frameworks. Even if you want to just look at the NIST framework and a couple of them um out there, at least somewhere is a good place to start rather than just saying, well, we didn't know what there was or what we should have in place compared to the big organizations. But um, I mean,
I
understanding the
wonder.
impact in particular, that would ensure that you focus on the risks that could actually cause the most
Mhm.
harm, not just the most likely ones. But again, your data should be protected. Ricardo, you want to just jump in here?
Yeah, you spoke about the impact, right? And people
Mm-hmm.
forget about the reputational damage as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a certain company that is in the CRM space had a major, well, breach, blamed for a major breach, and that would have impacted their share price. And they would have lost millions in a given day in terms of their share price value. Because when you are breached, it tells your customers that you are not probably the most secure organization, and you can lose customers' trust. And that's a major thing that will impact an organization. And notwithstanding the actual impact of the breach, you also have to look at the technology replacement costs, the recovery costs. You have to pay persons to recover that data. It's very costly. Think about you all just had some sessions on ransomware. Think about all those ransomware impacts on costs
Mm-hmm.
to the organization as well.
So
People underestimate the cost of recovery. They really underestimate.
that's another thing too, because I keep reading where the actual cost of this breach was like 4.5 million, 5.5 million, but they don't tell you exactly what it was. They would just tell you, well, getting things back up financially, operationally, and that's it. But they don't tell you what was put in place if especially if it was a ransomware attack. Recovering from a ransomware attack is nothing simple. It is only complex the end of it, because you still have to you just have to make a bunch of assumptions. You assume that they're still inside, you assume that everything was affected, you assume that they have knowledge about all operations and they know everything about everything else, and more importantly, they know about what you do not have in place. So now you have to go ahead building all of these plans and putting things in place. So even from that sense, not just even restoring what was there before, but looking at taking what happened, doing the full analysis and saying, okay, well, this is what happened. We have this backup, but how could it happen again? And what if it happens again? Because as Ricardo spoke about there, that lack of trust that you will have from your customers and your clients as well, that could definitely translate into something else financial, not just that people wouldn't take your services, but your stocks and stuff that you have, it could take a significant hit. All right, so ransomware in particular is I mean that's terrifying to begin with. Alex and I have always been saying that we have not to glorify them, but we have great respect for the ransomware groups because of the fear that they actually strike into all these organizations because it's not something simple to recover from. Mitigation in particular, yes, it will include things like robust backups, endpoint security, and especially, as Dale mentioned before, employee training. Because something as simple as somebody just clicked on an email, that could be it. But I just want to ask you all guys your thoughts here on threat risk assessments because phishing campaigns, internal phishing campaigns that are done, that's good. That's something that should be done. But do you all think that it's a bit overkill sometimes to the point where you have so many tests for phishing coming in that you just sometimes even wonder if something is real and should I even bother to click and open this anymore? And you ever had the experience of bypassing something that was a legitimate email because of you have so many tests with social engineering? You think there's any kind of fatigue as well? That I see Dale laughing there. Dale, I'll let you jump in here.
All the time, all the time. I question every single email. We have vendors sending information for risk assessments, and I question the vendors because these are external emails. Some of them they don't speak proper English, so the way the email is worded, I am very
Right,
paranoid.
right. Guys, what else with your thoughts there on this?
Pretty much the same thing as you. I just look at everything, although I mean that's just probably in my nature with the whole social engineering thing, but yeah, it gets some a little bit ridiculous. Um, I want to say out there, but I mean, I can
The
see where the
reason the
fatigue
reason why
might
I
set
wanted to
in.
get
It's
to
a good
get
thing as
your
well.
opinion for Johnny and Alex is because Johnny and Alex did this for a very long time, where they would send out some of the most cleverly crafted phishing emails. And if you ever get an email from Jonathan or Alex, you would possibly know what I'm talking about. But I guess it's good, Ricardo, you could jump in here too when we talk about like Dale and I both have this paranoia where every single email that comes in, we always wondering, do I click on it? Should I click on it? Should I even open this email? Right? But yeah, Ricardo, let me hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so if I wasn't expecting the email and it looks suspect or suspicious, but we say suspect in Trinidad and Tobago, I will not be clicking that email, right? And even if the email is a legitimate email, even if somebody says, but that person wants to email you, I will not click it because I don't know that person because you have to trust but verify. Another side of the coin is this: when you are running phishing simulation tests, often you find that person simply may not even click the email. And it's not a matter of they
Yeah.
understand what not to click. They are just so busy, your email gets ignored. So it makes measuring, their readiness very difficult. Just want to add that.
Okay. Alex?
Honestly, yeah, I really do get annoyed sometimes because everyone everyone in the office like why they even put to test you of all people? Because I would run tests out as well and they fall for it. And then the ones that the close security team sends out, they don't fall for it. So it's like why they even bother to test you? So it get for me and personally it does get a bit annoying. Like I have to do another test again. But I have fallen into the trap already of being over defensive, where we forgot to pay licenses for software. Well, not forgot, we didn't pay for licenses of software because the email came in. I was like, I don't know about this. I am flagging this as a phishing email. And it went out of my inbox for 3 months, 4 months before we got a notice. Hey, license renewal time. I was like, we didn't get any reminders. Yeah, you did. 3 months ago, the same email that you flagged as a phishing email. So I have fallen into that trap of just not trusting anything and doing it. But what a lot of these companies and these testing teams need to recognize is that one of the key things for a successful phishing campaign is the frequency in which you assess people. That is one of the biggest things that catches people. If you assess too often, then people's guards are always up and they'll question everything. However, if you stagger that assessment, then it becomes a lot easier to fool someone into falling for something. I think Johnny, I can't remember what year it was, but when we worked on a certain phishing campaign, I think you were part of the team then, and the MD at that company was boasting that their security awareness program was so good, and he was the first to fall for the email, and he also forwarded to 35 other people within the company, and all 35 also opened the email, and they were talking about their strong security awareness program, and they still fell for it. So let's be mindful.
So that to add to that, I think the frequency is one thing, but I think in a situation with from a risk perspective, I think the quality of it is more important because sometimes I've gotten stuff about furniture sales and this and that, and I mean,
But
stuff that's really obvious,
the lights
right?
on in the car park.
Yeah, so I think it reaches almost to the point where you have to almost do like spear phishing, um, for instead of general phishing to see who will click it. It has to be very carefully crafted. Because
But
if
it
you could
now,
get something with urgency, yeah.
I
Go
got
ahead,
to try it
Alex.
out now. Tropical Storm Melissa on the way. Look out for the Hurricane Melissa phishing emails for the Jamaicans particularly. I turn it
Hmm.
out now. Just wait for it.
Yeah, the relevance, right? That's
Yep.
something that would make it successful. And again, remember, a phishing attack as well. The likelihood is high because again, you have people that could be very creative. You could even go to ChatGPT or one of those and say, okay, I'd like to create a phishing campaign for my company and so on. What trending topics can I use to, so we have stuff out there. But
Mhm.
something that I want to discuss with you here is about what is done with what about the metrics of the campaign? Because I know a lot of companies they run the phishing assessments, but that's it. They just heard, okay, haha, you got caught, you got caught, you got caught. Here, do some training. But from a risk management perspective, how can this be used to better? How can the results of the phishing campaigns and phishing assessments be used, just like with a pen test assessment and an audit and stuff? To help companies achieve a better security posture. Alex, you could jump on and start off if you want to.
I think that's Alex.
Because of my own mouth. So yeah, so some of the metrics that we track when we do phishing campaigns is the usual stuff that you would expect. Open rate, delete rate, report rate, submission rate. The submission rate would be if they submitted, sorry, click rate and submission rates. Click rate being if they clicked any of the malicious links or downloaded the malicious attachment, and then submission in that if they do submit some sort of credential information or whatever we're asking them to submit. But along with that, it helps us understand where a person's gap is in understanding their role in protecting an organization. In terms of a lot of people either take the stance of they just delete or ignore. They don't think about, okay, well, there's a possibility of deleting till sends it to a mailbox somewhere to be processed. It could still have some sort of execution there. Granted, it's a very rare case for that to happen, but still is a possibility.
It still happen,
Whereas, yeah, whereas ignoring is just as bad because it's still in your inbox, and there are known attacks known as zero-click attacks, where all the mail needs to do is arrive in your mailbox. That's it. That's it, and it executes the malware, and that's it. Whereas if you're able to report it, you're able to capture that, hey, this person kind of understands this, or this person has a more heightened state of awareness when it comes to security because okay, they do suspect it, it does look
Yeah.
suspicious, and they are willing to be like, you know what, I think this is something that needs to be reported, that everyone needs to be guarded against, right? Another thing we look at too, and this goes back to the thing I mentioned before about staggering the frequency of doing the assessment, in that if we do a batch assessment where we target, I say 100 people within an organization, if we target all 100 people at the same time, what tends to happen is that 1, 2, or 3 people get the email at the same time, and because of that, people talk. So I will tell people, hey, you get this email about, the Amazon gift cards that they're giving out for completing the survey. Like, no, I ain't get the email. This other person say, yeah, I get the email. 4 or 5 other people talk about getting the email. So now word spreads about this phishing email going around. So if everyone had the same mindset of this is something odd, then boom, we understand that everybody is on the same page about protecting the organization. But then if other people be like, yeah, I get it, but I'm going to talk about it because but that's myself, then the whole premise of protecting the organization is gone. And the training becomes a little more tricky from that standpoint as well, because you don't know if people genuinely understand their impact or their role in protecting the security of the company.
Ricardo, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I know you have you work with this already in organizations.
Yeah, so added what Alex said is absolutely I agree with it, and that is also my approach, especially looking at that report rate, because you want person to report the email and you want to measure how many people actually not click but actually open the email in the first place to read it. I would say in addition to that, the type of fish is important. So you will have an idea of not only the quality, but the sort of attack vector. What it is this phishing attack is trying to do to that staff member. That is critical as well, because then you will know you have to put measures in place to protect the organization for that specific threat. And usually it will be remedial education and training and awareness. But it could be that if you identify that this person's attacking your organization, you can put other controls, to protect the organization, to have a better defensive depth strategy than a real security approach. That is very important as well. And to give an example, so it may be one person trying to get passwords, but it may be another person trying to infect the organization with some malware. And those are two different attacks, right? So one is a breach and one is trying to affect some computer.
That's why I wanted your opinion on this, because it's not just about who clicks what and stuff. It's basically what the email also has, what the payload is about as well. Because if you're looking at identifying threats and you realize that still up to now, social engineering, phishing is right up there with misconfigurations and malware and everything when trying to breach organizations. And this will, I think the metrics and the reporting and stuff is very important in particular because this will actually enhance the decision making by giving the board and the heads and stuff very clear data and metrics on where they could invest resources to protect the data and the other resources inside of there. Because as you were saying, if it's a spear phishing attack, for example, you could now see, okay, well, someone out there knows that this person has access to or is in charge of whatever. I mean, most of it might be common knowledge, but it's still good to know about what is um, the threat landscape, I guess, included with your human resource rather than just your regular data assets or something like that. Um, so this is some of that is what we actually just came onto, which is the benefits of the TRAs and stuff. But studies from just what I've read, you have it basically states that for organizations that actually perform threat risk assessments, which is a bunch of things. It's not just one process, but it's a whole strategy inside of it. They have usually saved on average about 30% compared to those without, right? Because they improve compliance and if they have to, comply with regulations with GDPR, but it greatly reduces the risk of fines as well. When you think about what we spoke about before with customer confidence and all of these things. So you reduce the breach costs in particular. You have improved governance, compliance, decision making. Um, so there are a lot of benefits for having TRAs. It does not have to be on the grand scale for what we are actually talking about, but you start somewhere. Even if you just want to have a few policies and start with these few policies, it will actually help you get a better sense of understanding about what there is to be protected, how you should protect it, and then you don't just make policies, put it in a SharePoint folder and tell everybody here, go and get acquainted with this. This is what you're supposed to do. You should have regular, I would say even quarterly meetings about some of these policies and ask people, do you understand XYZ? But more so, what about the feedback from people inside the organization about the policies? Are they even being monitored? Do people understand? Some people may not understand what is a violation. But it also helps with keeping in things compliant. So I'll ask someone from the panel here to jump in and talk a little bit more on compliance if he would be
Yeah,
so
so I was
gracious.
actually going to jump in on this on the slide before. So with compliance now, for PCI specifically, talking about, it's not an option anymore. You have to do it as of March 2025. You have to do annual TRAs. And again, this kind of comes back into helping with scoping again. Scoping is the wrong word, but can't come up with the proper term right now. Yeah, you have to do it for, I believe, which Ricardo, you could probably back me up on this. I think it's requirement 12.2, where they actually say you have to do TRAs annually or after any major environmental change. So for example, let's just say we were running Palo Alto at CFSI, and then we met a gentleman called Mr. Gooding who told us, hey, look, Fortinet is better. We change out all of our firewalls from Palo Alto to Fortinet. We have to then go and do a TRA on all those new Fortinet firewalls. Are they configured properly? And the whole list goes on. So yeah, in terms of compliance on PCI, you have to do it. And it makes the job a little bit easier. Well, I mean, it's a double-edged sword there. It makes life easier, but it's also a lot of work to get these things done. For PCI only, I could tell you there are about 10 requirements, I think. You have to do TRAs for every year, and depending on the outcome of the TRA, you may actually have to do them as much as monthly. For example, I think if your password, I think it's requirement 863. Oh God, sound like a real nerd here. Yeah, if you come up with a high risk TRA in that specific requirements, you have to perform that TRA monthly. Think about that. You have to, yeah, your resourcing alone for that would be a nightmare. So yeah,
I think he just made Deo reboot with that, because I see when you mention yearly and monthly, Deo started to blink uncontrollably. Ricardo, jump in here one time if you want. Oh, sorry,
No,
Johnny, I
no,
didn't mean to
it's
cut you.
just that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, at worst it's monthly, at best annually, and on average I see quarterly. But yeah.
Okay.
Just wanted to touch upon a point Jonathan raised. He spoke about resourcing. How many organizations in the Caribbean, basically going back to our previous point, how many organizations have an acceptable use of IT policy where the employees know how to report a fetch? That's the first thing. And now we're talking about TRAs. How many organizations are adequate resource or with competent staff to perform threat risk assessments in the first place? This is very important to do, but do organizations know that they need to be doing this and what the benefits are? Just throwing that out.
That's actually what brought me into this slide here with why the leadership has to prioritize TRAs, because um I I think it might be that a lot of organizations just don't know, as you're rightfully saying. And then when you hear things like PCI and PCI compliance and even a PCI assessment, that could run into some very high figures as well. So not everyone is going to have the resources available that Ricardo was talking about there. But I mean, as we cover most of this already, you can actually see why it's important for them. But this is where the board has to take, and not just the board, executive management, the director, even for the smaller companies, this is where they have to take responsibility in TRAs and actually have that first point there, a risk management strategy, right? Where you at least start there, and it will help ensure accountability for cybersecurity, but it could also help with providing a budget for cybersecurity, because for a lot of companies out there, especially small and medium size, usually it's just, okay, we have a firewall, we have antivirus, and people know not to click on certain emails. We have Microsoft or Office 365, and that's it. What else can we do? Because from the standpoint, a financial standpoint, it could get a bit sticky from there. So this is why it's important, and I'll let you all jump in here for this one with the executive responsibilities and TRAs to actually implement the TRA recommendations. Because again, after you get all of this wonderful stuff done and you've put in all of this work and you've given day one eye strokes with having TRAs monthly or quarterly as the case may be, because these things sometimes take anywhere from 6 to 8 to 12 weeks to carry out just one aspect of a TRA report based on all the documentation that you have. To get all that documentation in the first place could be way longer than that. So it's a lot of work that has to go inside of there, but if the recommendations in the actual report, the final threat risk assessment report, aren't taken seriously, then you have pretty much wasted your time. But guys, jump in here and give your insights on this.
Especially as you said with the budgeting and the resourcing,
Mm-hmm.
especially you have to go to vendors. I know you guys have to do that sometimes or most of the time. If you come back with a high risk TRA and it says that, hey, look, you need to perform this monthly, how exactly is a small business or medium-sized business going to do that? You're going to have to hire people dedicated to
Mm-hmm.
performing a TRAs, right? So yeah, it's a slippery slope, but at the end of the day, it really is important. It does help identify gaps and potential gaps.
Alex, you want to jump in on that
I'll,
slippery slope? Oh, sorry, Ricardo, you go ahead.
I'll take the side of the IT director who has implemented recommendations now, right? So recommendations will be made, action plans will be drafted, and normally it's probably to get the risk person off your back, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it is important to implement the recommendations that are made or to mitigate the risk. Now, organizations have options, and how they do that, they can do it in the most cost-effective manner possible. But it is not always possible, how to put it, to run down every single risk. So what organizations should do is take a holistic, integrative approach to risk management and to mitigating risk, which is something like enterprise risk management. In so doing, if you can mitigate one risk, it may actually address more than one issue or problem throughout the organization, more than one risk throughout the organization, because you have mitigated that risk at root cause. And that would be my recommendations for companies. Of course, it depends on the industry. We don't expect, if you do a TRA, and according to the findings, if you're working in a regulated environment, because of that regulatory pressure and because of your customer expectations, examples, and other driver, you will mitigate. However, if you're working in a smaller shop, as Shiva had alluded to earlier, maybe you'll have to take a risk-based approach. You prioritize your spend and your budget on the higher risk items. And that will be how I will view it from a technology perspective rather than from the risk perspective.
Alex, Dale?
Yeah, I always tell people the entire organization needs to eat, sleep, and breathe risk. Start living your life being very risk aware. Because as Ricardo said, rightfully, you might mitigate, eliminate one risk that might address many other issues in the back.
And to add to that too, I mean with the TRA and stuff in particular, the execs, right? Even though they implement the recommendations, one thing that's not there, but you see that last one with fostering a risk-aware culture, as Dave was talking about there. The executives in particular, another rule there is to make sure that the TRAs are actually effective by ensuring that your organization is not just ready, but capable to respond. So if you do have a threat to something, that could lead to some sort of untoward event, with a lot of these risk assessments, you look at the controls that you have in place. You have a lot of compensating controls. Look at where you need to tighten up stuff as well, right? So it's not just about what happens there, but also what could happen, right? Because if you don't and you neglect the TRAs here, you have increased vulnerability to breaches. And I think even in conducting the TRAs as well, right? If I just go back here from a ransomware perspective, right? Remember I was saying that sometimes when I do some monthly reports and I'm seeing like 500 to 600 organizations, that gets breached, right? I think the latest one I read about, which did a lot of damage, was Salesforce. And you have a lot of companies that would be using something like Salesforce, but it's not just Salesforce. There are so many others out there, but this is just one recent example there, right? So if, for example, you take all of the vendors and you look at the vendors, but you ask them as well, have you ever had a breach? And if so, what data was breached, or how did you recover from it? What are you doing to ensure? So it even has to go a little bit further as well to looking at the services that you use for your organization, because sometimes it's just easier to use, for example, software as a service, right? And but it's still very important to not just ask them if they are compliant with so and so, but get a little bit more personal and find out, okay, was there actually ever a breach? And if so, what type of breach it was, what happened? Because again, it goes back to the regulatory fines, which could be millions and millions of dollars, the loss of customer trust, market share, all of these things. So we just have two other slides really, and two or three others. It's just to talk about this case study with the Equifax. It's an old one, like I mentioned, but you had something like 47 million records being exposed out there, right? Actually, I think it was way more than that but I know confirmed it was, at least speculation was that it could be as high as 150 million, right? But I know from what I read, it was at least about 47 to 50. And the cause was really just an unpatched software vulnerability. So even in risk management, if you just go back to something as very simple and basic, but so very important as patch management, that alone could literally save you up to billions in fines that you have out there,
What
right? Because, sorry, Dave, go
what,
ahead.
yeah, what people don't understand is that all obsolete and outdated software is inherently vulnerable. Just because there is not CVE out there for it doesn't mean that there is no vulnerability. It's just a matter of time before someone like Alex or Johnny comes and finds a vulnerability in this software. And that's why, rightfully so, you said that patch management is very important, and that's something that you need to cover in your threat risk assessment process.
Mm-hmm. Right? Because what went wrong with them, exactly as they were saying, they had no proactive TRA to identify your unpatched systems. So even just basic monitoring, right? So I'm gonna just promote somebody here, right? Leslie, who's part of the group. Leslie has a company called Les Tech Services. So a lot of my clients who would use CFSI services, I always promote them to be like, hey, reach out to Leslie and Les Tech, let him do all the patching for you all, because for example, we do pen tests, and then a pen test is absolutely worth nothing if you just have that as a piece of document here and you do nothing with it. It sits there, right? There's a lot of mitigation and patching that has to take place afterwards. So even if you have to bring in a company to do manual patching for you, because sometimes not all of it will update with whatever it is, that's fine. But patch management can save you millions into billions of dollars, and it is something that is so simple but so very, very effective, even against ransomware or something like that. All right, so I'll let you all jump in for this one here, but how do you could have actually helped.
You even need to assess the patch management of your third party. So when you're doing your third party risk assessments, that's something I focus on.
Yeah,
If they don't provide me with proper patch management controls, I immediately, I kick off fuss, because some of these people saying, yeah, we do patch management and that's it. They don't tell you the frequency, if they
correct.
use automated tools, if they have policies in place. So you need to do, your due diligence, because a lot of breaches happening via third parties now.
Exactly. I will see that over and over again, because a lot of companies, especially bigger ones, they have so much security in place that is almost airtight when you think about it, and all the controls that they have in place. But even if you just read regular articles from the Register, Bleeping Computer, Hacker News and stuff, you will see that it is usually now where breach via third party is almost right up there with phishing attacks or misconfigurations or something like that. Right?
Not
So
even it's not even just the breach alone. It's just general operations. Look at what, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, AWS East went down,
yeah,
and look at all what went down because of that. And that's purely a third party that just provided
Yeah,
you with a
that,
solution.
that's a operational resilience risk,
Exactly.
because They have just all the eggs in one basket, basically.
Like, so it's a third party risk. Pull with your operational, you're not using any kind of failover mechanism, any redundancy mechanism at all to keep your operations running.
And
Even what it was it term
I
or
think
was breach, which is a single sign-on solution.
I think
Go
that's
ahead,
how
Kiba, sorry.
a lot of these, no problem. I think that's how a lot of these companies, they don't get questioned because they are who they are. Like Microsoft services,
Sure.
Google services, Amazon services. You just assume, well, these are billion-dollar companies, so they must have everything in place. And if you say, well, maybe I should ask them to see if they're ISO compliant, if they're SOC 2 Type 2 compliant or something like that.
They literally tell you, do you know who I am?
You know who we are, right? And to add to this as well, right? We have a lot of AI coming into the mix. They were wanted to get your opinion on this about AI in risk assessments and the involvement and basically what you think.
I think the most major concern with implementing AI or using AI is how do we ensure that the AI behaves safely, ethically, and within organizational boundaries? We need to look at the guardrails in place. How are we going to ensure that this AI is not accessing what it is not supposed to access? Is it hallucinating? If we tell this AI, do this, and it comes back, it says, hey, I did it, but it didn't do it or did it incorrectly. There's also, we need to ensure that these companies are not using our data or organizational data or sensitive data to train, enhance, upgrade their AI. There's one I'm very interested in is a new concern coming up with algorithmic bias because we're using a lot of AI for help desk and customer service processes. This is actually a risk about the AI being discriminating. So we live in the Caribbean, 20 different kind of accents. How we know the AI not being discriminating against the accents, against people's skin color. I mean, there's more of a first world concern than a Caribbean concern, I would say, but it is something that we have. I actually did an AI risk review where I had to assess that as a risk.
Okay, yeah. Guys, comments? I see Ricardo really shaking his head there in agreement. So
Whatever you said.
whatever
Supports,
they said.
supports, supports. One of the things, and I guess we winding down now, Shiva. So I just
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
build
it's
this.
pretty much to the end, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the add two things to close off with everything. Always remember that a TRE is a proactive approach to
Mm-hmm.
seeing your system. It's not something you do after the fact something happens. It's something you want to be constantly be doing and repeating over and over. It's not a one and done and you wait till next year. It's like, no, this is a constant thing you need to be doing. The second thing is from the executive standpoint. What executives need to understand is that a lot of the success of these things are dependent on their buy-in to it. A lot of times I've done assessments, I've done work where the technical guys are saying, yeah, we had a strong password policy, but the board members are complaining that they have to change the password too frequently, or the password length is too long. So therefore, we had to bring it back down to 8 characters, and special characters are not allowed. And this is what the problem we see a lot of the times is that a lot of people know exactly what they need to do to protect from systems and some of the risks that they're going to, how to mitigate some of these risks. But the risks remain there because the executives who need to sign off on these things or who need to approve on these things don't understand it themselves or not willing to understand themselves, and therefore they find that inconvenience and therefore they get rid of it. It's like
That's why I always advocate for an independent body to basically own that and maintain the security posture and see, is what we say is in policy, is that actually in practice?
yeah, but still you get the executives that'll be like, my company.
And when they get breached, they blame you.
They're like, okay, yeah, they blame the IT. They end up blaming IT anyway. They just go back to the original practices. So
I have one more question for everybody before we wrap up, right? So with AI and risk assessments and stuff, because in our field with risk assessment, you have all these auditors and risk assessors and stuff. Do you all think that AI now or in 5 years from now or up to 5 years from now will replace risk assessors and or consultants or whatever it might be in the field? What y'all think about that?
Not this one.
Not
No,
the great deal
but
that guy.
it is something
if,
that I see as a possibility.
Okay.
if I have to answer honestly, not one with the caliber of Dio, for sure. and, and also, the answer is to an extent. I think that the AI can complement the work of a qualified risk assessor.
Right.
But in terms of, remember, a lot of the threats are not really codified as yet in a computer system. Things like culture, things like emotion, things like, you know what, that guy tends to behave in this way. It's very difficult to understand all those things that make up a system. Because remember, a system will be composed of people too. People process technology and information. The people element is going to keep risk assessors employed for a very long time.
I totally agree. The human element in risk is a major part of
Yeah.
us assessing risk.
Okay.
I
All
don't
right.
see it
As we
replacing.
AI would probably try to quantify based on you're gonna have to give it what controls you have in place, but it wouldn't be able to pivot. If you guys understand what I say, in the way that
Complement
we
for
would.
sure. It will complement for sure. It's not going to replace.
yeah.
It's not going to
To
replace.
work hand in hand, I agree. But
I think we
Yeah.
could use it
replace.
more as like monitoring. We use AI, some sort of AI monitoring framework. But at the end of the day, the risk assessment needs to either be done by a human element or at least be verified and validated by humans.
I agree.
I'm just trying to
Ravindra
keep my work
actually.
now, boy. I don't want to get.
Ravindra made a good point, right? Because he's also looking at physical security, right? So, you have that issue there with, yes, you might be able to put in some blueprints about what you have where, but physical security, when you're also looking at that as something for your servers, your database, your entry points, even the positioning of your Wi-Fi access points, all of these things, it has to be included. So, to add there to your key takeaways, well, we just want to make sure that I just want to put that inside it. That AI, yes, while it can work together, remember AI is something that constantly has to be trained over and over and over with new threats and new everything that comes up. So the human element will always, I think, and what we think, will be required inside of there. So, guys, thank you very much for joining. To wrap up, just a reminder, you could find all of these on the CFSI CyberFence YouTube channel. Some pretty looking artwork there. I'm very proud of it, right? But we have just three more left. We have some interesting stuff. We have two with pretty much with social media. One on Friday with typical social media fraud and scams. And next week we have one on staying safe online. We will come back with ways for you all to secure yourself online, to secure your email, your accounts, your WhatsApp, your Facebook, Instagram, social media, etc. And then to end things off at the end of the month for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we will have a panel discussion on how we could go about looking at protecting Caribbean critical infrastructure. So we look at some of the attacks against Caribbean critical infrastructure without calling in names and stuff. We look at more like say some ransomware groups and stuff, or things that were available in the media. But I am always uncomfortable with calling the victims. But we look more so at protecting Caribbean critical infrastructure if it's possible at all, and where's our starting point. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me once again. It's always a pleasure to have you here. It's nice to see the whole CFSI crew. Big shout out to Joel. Joel is missing, but Joel, wherever you are, I think he's in Guyana right now. Um, but yeah, everyone, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up on the chat there. So guys, thank you all so much. And we have the other one, social media fraud and scams coming up on Friday. So we hope to see you all then. Anyone has anything else to add before we wrap up, or you're okay?
Where we drinking it?
As expected. I was expecting that from Jonathan. Jonathan, sir, I see you have that Dr. Evil look going with you. Any comments, sir? Are you okay?
Any closing words?
Any closing wisdom for us?
Just make it compliant.
So just make
Yes,
it come.
sir. Yes,
Just
sir.
just according to Johnny, just get it done. Right? So
Please have your PM send me an email.
Yes.
all right, guys. To all of our friends and well-wishers out there in the audience, thank you so much for joining us. Look out for your certificates within the next hour to 24 hours, and we'll see you all on Friday. Thanks for joining us.
Good one.